Hi, Mark. How are you?
Good. Better than I was a few days ago.
Feeling better?
Yeah, this weekend I had pretty bad flu. A lot of fun.
Been going around, that's for sure. You're using Greg's microphone.
We noticed, didn't we?
Works for me.
I'm sure Greg will be
Right.
happy to go back there.
So you move back, Greg.
Are you trying to say, Larry, you can't hear me?
Not when you speak. But
All right.
A lot of times you didn't speak.
Okay, whenever, I think we're all ready. Okay, we'll start with our workshop. You want to do the pledge before the workshop or before the?
Whatever you want to do.
Let's do it before the meeting. We'll just go right into the workshop. All right, so we'll start right into the workshop. We have Mr. Mativier here from Eaton Peabody to give us a presentation on the executive search proposal for our new town manager. Thank you.
Great.
Did I say your last name wrong?
Good evening. No,
Okay.
no, that's right. Same as
Okay.
one of your counselors
Thought
here.
it looked
right?
familiar.
Thank you. My name's Dick Mativier. I'm with Eaton Peabody Consulting Group. Thank you for the opportunity to allow us to make a presentation here this evening. A member of our team is Don Garish. He's currently in southern climate, enjoying 80-degree weather today, but he'll be coming back to this area on Sunday, and he'll be working on this project as well if you're so kind to elect us to do this search for you. Both Don Garish and I have been involved in municipal government for many years. Don for 37 years, myself for 40 years. Don was Brunswick town manager for 19 years. I was finance director in Lewiston for 29 years. So we come with a lot of experience and you could say working in the trenches of municipal government. Don's done about 20 searches. I've been involved in 10 searches to date. We've been with Eaton Peabody, Don for 5 years. I've been with them for 4 years. So we have a lot of experience in these areas of dealing with manager searches. I believe you all have a copy of the proposal. The process that we would follow would be to, number one, basically develop a strategy with the council. Who do you want involved in the process? Do you want to limit it to the council? Do you want to involve other people in the process in doing the actual interviews or just getting information from them? We'll review this with you, and once you've made a decision, we'll move forward. The important part about involving other folks, though, is that this process has to remain confidential. It's difficult to get applicants to submit their resume for consideration if there's a feeling that the proposal will not remain confidential. So that's an important factor to keep in mind. The first step after we would meet to develop this strategy would be to develop a timeline. I've got a sample timeline that I passed out to you. And this is a sample of the process that we would follow, and basically set this timetable in place so that everyone knows what can be expected of you in the process, as well as any of the applicants, so that they have an idea what the timeline in the process is. Because what happens is that some of these applicants are applying to different communities, and so it's a juggling for them on where they're going to focus their efforts. And knowing what a timeline is helps in that process so that they know what to expect. We would assist the council in developing what skills, experience, expertise you're looking for in the candidates. That's the first gathering process that we have. In addition to that, what we've used in many communities, and this is something that you could use if you would so elect, would be to meet with department heads, and so that we get input on what department heads are looking for in a manager. These are the people that work with this individual on a daily basis. So it's important to get their input in the process, we feel, in determining what skills, experience, expertise that they would look for if they were hiring a manager. We also on occasion have allowed the public to have input in the process, where the public can come to a meeting, gathering, get input from them on what they're looking for as far as a town manager, what experience, skills, expertise, those types of things. So once we have all that information, we gather the information, we prepare a draft advertisement. That draft advertisement obviously can't include everybody's input into the process, but we try to focus on what the key factors are, what's really important in the community, what's really going on. Is it economic development? Is it a school issue? Is it working with the water department and determining where they're going to be going? What are these key issues that are going on within the town so that we can incorporate in that advertisement and try to focus on getting individuals who would meet that criteria, have experience in those particular areas. The draft ad is passed by you folks, and once you give a go-ahead on that draft, after having your input, we put the advertisement out, and we accept applications. Generally, we're looking at a 3 to 4 week period to allow those applications to come in. Those applications would go to our office. They would not come to the town office. We would take those applications, review them, and come up with basically a list of what we feel are the key candidates that meet the criteria that you're looking for. We would present a list, a notebook, which would be complete with all the resumes, any letters of recommendation, their cover letter, whatever the applicant has submitted for information. You would be able to, review all of that information. We would, come up with a list of potentially 10 to 15 candidates that we feel are the top of the ones that are submitted, and give you all the information. And then we would hold the other applicants. You could still review all of the resumes and any of the information that we receive, but we'd like to focus on those key 12 to 15 position, or applicants, if you will, for the position that meets the criteria, so you could focus on who do you want to interview out of these candidates. Once you've gone through that process, we can assist you, but you determine which candidates you actually want to interview. In the interview process, we will work with you. We'll provide you information on questions to ask the candidates. We'll have draft questions. We'll also provide you with a list of questions not to ask the candidates. And these are the questions that could get you into legal troubles, and we try to point all of those out to you before we go through the process, so you'll be aware of that. After we've gone through and identified the candidates that are going to be interviewed, we actually set a time frame for them to come in for the interviews. We do all the scheduling, basically follows the timeline that that the council has approved. We'll contact each of the applicants and set that up, so that doesn't have to be done by you folks or anyone from the staff. We would participate in the interviews only as an observer, okay? We provide you with draft questions, but we would only observe the actual interviews and try to keep a clock on the interviews so that they maintain the amount of time that we're looking for that interview to last. We would follow up a process on the second interviews, which would be similar once you've streamlined the candidates that have been interviewed to a few finalists. We generally recommend no more than 3, possibly 2 finalists that you could focus your efforts on. We would then provide complete background checks of those individuals. That includes credit history, any criminal history that they may have, history with previous employers. We do all that background check. We provide a report, and you will receive that report. So you'll have information that we have gathered relative to those finalists. We can assist the council in answering any questions that you have relative to the evaluations, and then come to a point where you would hopefully make a final decision, select the candidate. We would, in the process, let me take a step back. In the process of getting to the finalists, we have also used a process of having each of the candidates, the finalists, meet with department heads as a follow-up. We did it initially before you went out and put that advertisement. We could do it again after you've reached the finalists. And what we would do if you elect to utilize that process is let the candidates know in advance. If you make it as one of the finalists, it's likely that your name will become public if we go through this process. The candidates are generally acceptant of that if they're a finalist for the position. They could have this interaction with department heads and also a similar process with citizens of the community so that they could see who the finalists are that the council is considering before they make that final decision. Once the final decision is made on selecting that final candidate, we can assist the town and actually negotiate a contract with that selected candidate. That's up to you folks. You could do it yourselves if you would prefer to do that, but we're there to assist you, and we've done them on most of the searches that we've been involved with. So that's a summary of the process, the timeline that we could utilize, but basically it's your process. We're willing to, modify that to the extent that you want to utilize in your search for a new town manager. And with that, I'd basically answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Do we have some questions from councilors?
I do have just a couple questions. You mentioned a selection committee in the draft here, or your outline. Who do you typically use for a selection committee? The council, and department heads? How do you usually formulate that committee?
Well, the selection committee would be made up of the council and or other individuals that you may want to include in the process. And it varies from community to community.
Okay.
Sometimes it may include department heads. That's a touchy one because, they can end up being involved in selecting or preferring a candidate that is ultimately not selected, and that could be an issue. But that's a process that's used by some communities, and it can also involve other people that, either citizens or people involved in one aspect of community, involvement.
Great. My other question I had was, how many applications would you expect a community like Lisbon to receive?
That varies. I would expect, based on what we've been seeing recently, we're currently doing the search in Poland. We're at the tail end of the search for the town of Poland. We're also working with Wiscasset, sort of in the advertising mode for that job, and casting is one that's going to be coming up in the future. We haven't started yet. But for a town like Lisbon with population base and the size of the budget, I would expect between 40 to 60 applicants probably.
Great, and then I have only one more question, I promise. What about Eaton and Peabody is different than, say, Maine Municipal Resources, Maine Municipal Association or Maine Municipal Resources?
Municipal Resources.
Municipal Resources, yeah, thank you. What makes your firm a little different than the others?
They all do the work. What makes us probably a little more different is we've actually been in communities and worked in communities with our experience, and being in the trenches, so to speak. That's, the difference that we bring. The second one that we find is helpful is that Don Garish has been president of the International City Managers Association. As such, he has a lot of contacts throughout the country. If there's someone that he knows that can assist in working with us on backgrounds, seeing what some of these applicants may have been doing in their other communities. If he doesn't know someone, he probably knows someone who knows someone else who could give us information in that background review process. So we found that to be very helpful.
Great, thank you so much.
Anyone else? I have a quick question. If we chose to work with your organization, would we work with an individual who would be like a point person, or would we work with a group from your organization, or how would that work?
You'd work with both of us, and at least one of us would be at all of these sessions, and many of the times both of us would be involved. We both share the workload that's going to be done in the search process. So you'd basically be getting two people working on the project.
Okay. All right, anyone else? Well, you've given us some food for thought. As you probably know, all three organizations that we're looking at were pretty much the same on paper. So it's been really valuable to hear how each organization represents itself to us and how different it can be.
Okay. Well, thank you
We
for the
appreciate it.
opportunity again. I know this at the tail end of your process. We were actually, working other communities and the other dates that you had, and thank you for accommodating us to be here this evening.
I'm glad you could be here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay? Thank you.
Our council meeting doesn't start till 7. It's a little early.
Would you like to recess?
We can recess. I am going to make a note that we have some guests in our audience. Boy Scout Troop 109 from right here in Lisbon with their troop leader, Mr. Ray. And we're really pleased to have the boys here working on, is it citizenship in the community? Okay. And we'll be back in about a little over a half hour. So we're sorry that there's such a long break in between, but we need to start the council meeting at 7 o'clock so that folks who expect it can be here too. So we'll take a little break and then we'll be back. 7. The council meeting starts at 7.
Can we get 10 minutes at the end of the workshop? We're supposed to look to talk.
We need to start putting that on the agenda so I don't forget it. Sure, we can. Any input from the public?
Questions, Dr. Fitzgerald, of Mr.
Dot, can you go to the microphone so the camera can hear?
Dr. Fitzgerald, it's unusual for me not to say anything. A comment and a question. Is it unusual to have that many candidates out looking for a job as a town manager? You mentioned that there are possibly 40 applicants that you might be getting.
Yeah.
Is that unusual, that many?
No, it isn't.
It isn't.
No, it isn't.
Had another question or a comment, and I can't, I didn't write it down, sorry.
We'll still be here. Anybody else?
Don Fellows from this side of town. Since you asked, I have a question for Mr. Mativier also. And that question is, the current interim town manager for Wiscasset is Don Garish, is that correct, or was?
Mr. Garish is going to be the interim town manager for Wiscasset starting next week. He will be working there 3 days a week, which will vary during the course of his employment. But during that period of time, he'll still be available to work on this particular project if we are chosen.
And that was my concern, is there an impact?
No, we don't believe so.
Thank you, Don.
Remembered.
I thought of my other comment. He was saying that I wondered how many candidates would be applicable or applying for, no, I guess, I'm sorry, start again. How many towns similar to Lisbon are in the market for a town manager? Similar in size, location?
Currently, they're probably more than usual. Recently, we're wrapping up Poland right now. We're also working on Wiscasset. The town of Brunswick is going to be commencing a search shortly. Town of Thompson is actually looking for a manager currently. So, there are many, vacancies that are being filled, at this time.
Thank you.
Yeah, Lisbon is a little unique in location and our needs at this point, so that was one of my thoughts.
Spoken like a truly loyal resident. We're special. And we know it. Anybody else? All right, we'll take that little break now. And we'll be back for the town council meeting. Thank you. Everybody ready? We'll call this town council meeting to order. Please rise for the pledge.
To the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call Twyla, please.
Councilor Garrison?
Present.
Councilor Lunt?
Here.
Councilor Metivier?
Here.
Councilor Bickford?
Yeah.
Councilor Ward?
Here.
Councilor Pesky?
Here.
Councilor Brunel?
Here.
And the next item.
First item on the agenda is good news and recognition.
Councilors?
I just want to quickly thank Chief Brooks for his help during our period absence of Mr. Houston to now having Mr. Olmsted. So thank you very much for your help, Chief Brooks.
Definitely. I have a note. There is some good news from our Economic Development Office. Tracy Stuber asked me to pass on so that everybody knows that Unitil will be doing a presentation on Wednesday, February 12th at 6 o'clock at the Lisbon Community School. And for this meeting, the Unitil has sent letters to all the businesses and residents who are located in that in the target area that's for that first meeting. If you didn't get a letter, if any residents or businesses didn't get a letter, it means they're not in the targeted area. But you can still go and hear what they have to say if you'd like to see that presentation. As interest peaks in the community, Unitil will hold future informational meetings. It's important to remember that, when we bring gas lines into town, it's not just so gas lines can be there, it's so the gas company can make some money too. So we think that, a lot of us think that having gas lines put in is going to be a really positive and growth-oriented thing for the town of Lisbon. And we encourage people to stay interested in the meetings that Unitil is offering. They can be very informative, and it's a really great sign of the growth for Lisbon and our opportunities for moving forward. So if you live in if you didn't get one of those letters, you can contact the Economic Development Director, Tracy Stuber, and she'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. So I think that's great news, because we've been talking about having gas lines in Lisbon for a long time, and moving forward with that. Is there any other good news? Okay, we'll move on. And the next item, please, Twyla.
Is the public hearing. It's a renewal pawnbroker establishment license for Daniel Miller, doing business as Double Diamond Pond.
Okay.
Need to open the public hearing.
Thank you. I'll open the public hearing. Do we have anyone who'd like to speak? Okay. Hearing none, we'll close this public hearing. And the next item, Twyla?
Is an additional public hearing for a mass gathering permit for Stanley Costello Jr., doing business as the No. 1 Flea Market.
I'll open the hearing. Do we have anyone who'd like to speak? Seeing no one, we'll close that hearing. And the next item, please.
Is a public hearing for the 2014-15 capital improvement budget.
I'll open that hearing. Do we have anyone who'd like to speak on the capital improvement budget? Okay, seeing no discussion, we'll close that hearing. And the next item, please.
Is audience participation.
Okay. Mr. Fillmore?
Larry Fillmore from Lisbon. After reviewing the slideshow for the police department, I am confused as to the total number of personnel assigned to the police department. During Chief Brooks' presentation, can he explain how many people are paid under the police budget? His slides do not include support personnel. How many personnel make up the police department, including the animal control and dispatch center? Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, Dot Fitzgerald, longtime resident of Lisbon Falls. Two things. I would like to publicly thank the Public Works Department for filling in a lot of the potholes on Route 196. I thank them, and my car thanks them. Second, when Chief Brooks gives his presentation, are we going to be allowed to make comments or ask questions? Because I have a couple questions about the accidents on Route 196, specifically Capitol Avenue.
I'm sorry, Dot. It's not. This is a presentation that he's doing.
That.
It's not. That's not what it's meant for. If you have questions, though, I'm sure that he would be happy to entertain them if you would email them or give him a call or call his office to make an appointment with him. Thank you. Do we have anyone else? Okay. For audience participation response, I don't
There's
think,
none.
that's the next item, okay. We don't have any responses because we didn't have any questions. We'll move on to the consent agenda. Is that the next item, Twyla?
Yes, Order 2014-21, to approve a renewal pawnbroker establishment license for Daniel Miller Jr., doing business as Double Diamond Pond, a mass gathering permit for Stanley Costello, doing business as the No. 1 Flea Market. The minutes of January 16, that was a workshop. The minutes of January 21, the minutes of January 21, which is the regular meeting, and the workshop, and January 28th, the workshop, and the minutes of January 28th, the regular meeting.
Make a motion to accept the consent agenda 2014-21 A through G.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Order passed 7-0.
Thank you. Next item, Twyla?
Under Council Orders, Resolutions, and Ordinances, Order 2014-22, the 2014-15 Capital Improvement Budget.
Okay. I've lost my place once again.
Need sticky notes.
I know it.
Did
Uh,
you need a
Want to
copy of it?
pass it?
I think I keep going past it. I'm sorry. Okay, so we have, thank you. We have in front of us the Town of Lisbon Capital Improvement Plan. Did we have, did we have someone who was going to speak on this for us? No? Then we can talk about it. We have the summary of the Town of Lisbon in all its sections. Any counselors have any questions, comments, a direction we'd like discussion to go in?
I don't see anything wrong. I mean, there's gonna be some stuff that we're gonna eliminate anyways, but,
Mm-hmm.
if I was playing call, I have no, I have nothing against it. I noticed the planning board had made a couple of suggestions. I don't know if those have been addressed in the version that we have here.
I found.
Okay.
Mr. Fellows, are you here for the planning board, or did you? You were just here as an interested citizen. Do you, what were those questions? Do you remember, Mark, from our last discussion?
I'm trying to remember. I think there was one about looking forward for a, trying to find like river access or like a park along the river, either at the Warmbo area or somewhere else if that isn't feasible. And I know there was one about the paving the roads, that we need to have, more of a plan for managing road pavement and, getting back up to speed where we need to be on maintaining roads. As citizens talk about potholes in the streets, it's something that we need to get on that and make sure it's really fixed in the long term.
Sure.
This is from memory now, so.
Okay.
The planning board input was the park consideration at some point, just to bring it to your attention, that somewhere in the capital improvement plan, it is in the comp plan, as well as proper maintenance of roads and so forth, and it's in the comp plan. So we didn't see a lot of no comments in the capital improvement plan for that this year. And so the idea was to bring it to the public to say, whether it's in this year or next year, it needs to be in there, or should be if we want to be in compliance with the comp plan.
Okay.
I think it's also important to remember that the capital improvement plan is what I kind of consider a wish list. It's a large list. It's nice if we could have all this stuff, but that doesn't necessarily mean that this stuff will make it through the budget. Just for the people that are watching on TV or in the public, this is not a guarantee that we're going to do this stuff. This is stuff that we'd like to do if money was no option.
Or object. I have the information, Mr. Fellows. The planning board did endorse talk about the comp plan in terms of the development of the waterfront area and infrastructure in terms of paving lines and so forth. So we'll make a note of that here. Maybe it's here and we didn't see it because they're. No. So when we talk about the budget, we can talk about that. Any other discussion from council? I think something that's important to keep in mind is that this is this summary of the capital improvement plan is something that we have to keep in mind throughout the budget process. It helps bring us back to what needs to be done when we start to get lost in the details and those, the need to cut the budget or reduce the budget or change the budget. Every now and then we can use the summary to reground ourselves and make sure that we know what our focus and our goals are, and to remind us of that. So this is valuable information for us as we move forward into the dreaded budget season. All right. I think we can move on to the next item, Twyla.
Order 2014-23, the Energy Saving Performance Contract.
Yes. This is,
You just
did I? Oh, there it is. Okay. This is in regards to the performance contract results. Mr. Layton, he's not here, is he? Okay. Mr. Layton sent us a memo that informed us of who responded. We had responses from 4 firms: Heliotropic Technologies, Mechanical Services, Siemens Industry, and Train Energy Services. And on the 31st, an interview committee that was made up of a school committee member, 4 school department employees, 2 municipal employees, interviewed the 4 interested vendors. Do you have anything? You were at those interviews, Dylan, so I wondered if you had any insights. How did it go? Was it?
It was a. Did have the honor of participating in the interviews. All 4 of the agents or companies were qualified to do the job. They all presented had a great presentation for the committee. We had a discussion about the qualifications of everybody. Everybody was qualified. We had selected questions that we all asked every representative from the organization, and we did, as a interview committee, select Siemens Industries to be for the performance contract for the energy savings unanimously.
Good. The note that I had from Mr. Layton, and I also had a chance to talk with Superintendent Mr. Green. It sounded like it wasn't just a unanimous decision. Everybody was very happy with the choice. Siemens Industry has been working with the school department for some time now, and so having an organization that's already familiar with Lisbon and some of Lisbon's needs, and being able to build on that and work on this energy savings performance contract I think this is going to save the town a lot of money over time. And so it's something that we've been talking about for a while, and moving forward with it has just been, I think that we're almost ready. We got books, just so everybody knows. We got giant books to read before we came here.
It's very entertaining.
But it was enlightening and informative, and I think that everyone should know that if the town council and the school committee were to decide not to move forward with the energy performance improvement measures that are a result of the energy audit, then we would end up paying for the audit. But the point of doing the audit is so that we can create a plan to save money overall, and then we wouldn't have to pay for the audit. So it pays for itself in the end. It's kind of like a lot of things. You don't have to pay for it if you hire them to do the work. And we know there's a lot that can be done, and they had sort of identified some issues that they could move forward with in advance, I think. So I'm looking forward to seeing some positive results. Okay. Ready to move on to the next item? Okay. Next item, Twyla?
Is under other business, the fire department presentation by Chief Gallipo.
Hoping the screen comes back, it's just hibernating right now. And it does. Good evening.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Okay. My name's Chief Gallipo, as you know that. I've met all of you. Just met the new intern town manager this morning, so this is kind of good. This will enlighten him a little bit of the public safety between myself and the police department, and him being here. And I got some short slides here that we're just going to go through. A little bit of a history of the fire department, where we've come, what we're doing now, and what our plans are, hopefully with the future, if all works out. So, and let's make sure that the computer works with us. There we go. All right, as you know, the Lisbon Fire Department is a progressive, motivated group of individuals that strive to assure that they do the best service to the community that they can achieve. They do this by training to standard, being accountable, and working under a group of true leaders who care about everything that we stand for. The department, as you know, is called for everything that can be imagined: fires, accidents, smells, bells, and salvage. We are determined to provide the best service possible to whoever calls upon us. I'm sure a majority of everybody in this room has seen us in operation, heard us go by, or knows that we're definitely out there. I'll give you a brief history. The fire department started the village station, which is the village, I'll say it is E.T. Smith Hose Company down here in the Graziano Square area. Was established in 1800 by Elmer T. Smith. Their first piece of apparatus was a Class B hand tub, appropriately named the Turret 1, and that hand tub was built by Hunterman in 1852, and we still have that in possession of the town. And there's a picture of it up there. To date, the oldest known hand tub in the village area, Lisbon Falls, was the General Bates No. 3. It was a large Class A engine built by Button in 1878 out of Weymouth, Mass., and named for the Civil War General James Lawrence Bates, who was wounded at Gettysburg. This unit was acquired in 1888 and probably was housed on Maple Street on the site of the town hall and the fire station, which were both destroyed in the fire of 1901. Where that is now, we do not know, but that was that big cast stainless, or not stainless, but shiny tub steamer looking type of apparatus. And if we could have kept that, that would have been definitely worth the historical value to have it still in the town. So at an unknown date, the department was also organized in Lisbon Center. That was disbanded in the 70s, early 70s. Initially, they had a hose reel which was connected to the mill's water supply. 3 different communities, 3 different mill communities, 3 different departments back then. A major fire occurred in 1896 involving half a dozen business blocks in Lisbon Falls. all of which were rebuilt just in time for the devastating fire of 1901, in which the entire business district of Lisbon Falls was destroyed. Basically, Lower Main Street as we know it was gone, so we had to rebuild. The fire of 1901 prompted the purchase of an American Fire Engine Company 650-gallon per minute Metropolitan class steamer housed in Lisbon Falls, as well as the installation of state-of-the-art water systems in 1903, sprinkler systems to protect those commercial buildings. A 1922 Model T stored in the Lisbon Falls station used for parades and other functions was also put in service, and the 1929 McCann still used for special functions and parades by members of E.T. Smith. Both of those have been refurbished and are in our possession now. Those we use for parades and that type of stuff, so you've seen those. The individual in the bottom is Deputy Chief David Plummer, who retired not too long ago. So after World War II, the town continued to upgrade the defenses. Lisbon Falls received a 1948 500 GPM Ford, 1955 750 GPM custom by American LaFrance, and a 68 750 GPM Ford by Howe. Lisbon received a 1956 500 gallon per minute Chevy and a 63 750 gallon Chevy, both by American LaFrance. Starting to see what we're kind of dealing with. We got some Chevy going and we got some Ford going. So, in 1977, two 1250 GPM fire truck units on Spartan chassis were placed in service. After a lengthy debate and national attention, one was painted lime green and the other was painted red. This tradition still holds today, with the E.T. Smith trucks being lime green and Lisbon Falls red. When I first became chief, stepped from deputy to chief, my first decision as the person who took my place was my mentor, David Plummer, comes in, is now the deputy of E.T. Smith Hose Company, says, under contract, both of those trucks, the newer trucks that we just bought, were going to be contracted red. We were going to go to one single color. The deputy came to me, and of course, growing up under him in this department, that will be green. So I marched into the town manager's office at that point, Mr. Lunt. We had a discussion about that, and we basically let them vote about what colors it was going to be, and lo and behold, the company voted to keep their color green. So I've been to national seminars or trainings and told people I'm from Lisbon, Maine, and they go, oh, two truck colors. That would be us. So I still think Moxie Orange it would be the way to go. 68 Camaro Orange was another issue. So ladder service has been provided by ground ladders up to 1973, when the city of Lewiston donated a 1944 American LaFrance 65-foot ladder truck, which was assigned in Lisbon Falls. That was an open cab truck, so if it was snowing and you were on your way to a call, put your goggles down because you were catching that in the face. In 1986, the town bought a 100-foot Seagrave aerial apparatus, light duty, and that truck was in service until we did the 4-for-2 deal, which we'll get into in the Pierce, for the Pierce apparatus. So the present apparatus as we have it today, as it is included in the Fire Department Refurbishment and Replacement Program, CIP, which you were just talking about, approved by the Board of Selectmen on September 7th, 2004. When we had to buy two new trucks, or when we chose to buy the two trucks that you see right there, we reduced our fleet from 4 trucks and only replaced it with those 2 trucks. So we got rid of 2 trucks. We got rid of 3 pumpers and a ladder truck and replaced it with a pumper truck and a pumper, it's called a quint, which is a ladder pumper. So we reduced our fleet there. When we bought the 2 FTIs at the 2 Spartans in 1977, how much do you think they cost? $35,000. When we replaced those trucks, does anybody remember what those cost us? 10 years now already ago, $1.3 million. So engine 1 is a 2003 Pierce 1,000-gallon 1,500 CAFS pumper that has newer technology on it that everybody is pretty much going to, and that's compressed air foam. It's a compressed air foam system where we introduce foam, which isn't out of the ordinary in firefighting aspect, but now we introduce air with it, which creates more bubbles. So we're throwing more of a shaving cream foam out there, which absorbs BTUs better and works better for us. Truck 6 is a 2003 Pierce Quint. It's a 105-foot ladder. Only has a 300-gallon tank on it because, of course, it has that huge ladder on the top of it. It has a 1,500 CAFS pump. and they both have generators and a complement of equipment on them. Squad 3 is an F550 2009 with a custom body and a forestry skid tank. We did all the work on that truck when we replaced that truck. That we bought the Ford, the cabin chassis, and then we had the body built. But we did all the lights, the department themselves, and the members of the truck committee did everything on that truck. Engine 2 is a 2002 Freightliner, 2,000 gallon, 2,000 pump. That is, once you see that, where tours are going to be here in a couple weeks, which works out really well. It gets everybody into the fire stations, gets you familiar with them. If you haven't been in the fire stations, then it will be able to explain some things and you'll be familiar with these. But you can see that that picture does that truck no justice. When you're standing next to that truck, it's 3 feet shorter than the ladder truck, meaning in length. So that is a big truck, a very intimidating truck for my members when it comes to driving it and everything else. Engine 7 is our oldest responding engine in the fleet. It's a 1994 Spartan 1,000 gallon, 1,250 pump, which has been refurbed. Rescue 10 was one of the first actual benefits of our refurb program, or our refurb account, the CIP program. We had money already being put away when the Rescue 10 that we had before that actually was unstickerable and could not respond anymore. We were able to actually find a demo, which was that rescue truck, is a 2004 HME, has the extrication equipment, an SCBA fill station, and a light tower on it that fit our workings, fit our operation, and we're able to buy that out of our account that we already had money set aside for. So we had to shift some trucks around, but that kind of protected us. We didn't have to go to the town floor and say, we need $250,000 to replace a fire truck for it. And Tank 9 is a 1973 Ford, 1,900 gallon, 250 gallon pump. That's been refurbed. That has a new body on the back of it. That's a strong 1973 Ford chassis. We were going to replace the whole truck, but when it came time to do that, our mechanic said that the cabin chassis is pretty good, so we could just slide a body on the back of it. It's a poly body, so when it comes time and on the program, it's actually, we're just going to slide a new cabin chassis underneath it and keep the body. So kind of it's saving money and doing, what we can to make that program work. Still pretty strong. You might see that that's coming up for replacement, though. It is a 1973 split axe, so there's only a selected few people that can drive that in the firehouse. So that was our history of our apparatus and where we stand. So manpower, as history stated, the department used to be 3 separate departments. After the Lisbon Center Department was disbanded, the town decided to go to a 1-department, 2-company under the direction of 1 chief. Howard Ricker was tapped out as the chief. As a call chief, he took command of the 2 companies, which comprised of 60 call fire positions, which is 30 at E.T. Smith Hose Company down here in the village and 30 in the Defender Hose Company way back when it was called Lisbon Falls Fire Company. So now we became 1 department, 2 different companies. Upon Chief Ricker's retirement in 1990, after 30-plus years in the position, the town hired our first career full-time chief. That was Chief Peter Lamb. He was in the department for 8 years, and along with the dedicated service of many call officers, set the groundwork to where we are today. He was a visionary as far as looking at where we needed to go and how we needed to get there, and set a lot of the base guidelines of the base work for where we are today. Chief Lamb has set goals to better the department and move it into the future. He established the Chief Ricker Memorial Park, improved department communications and morale, and started the process of fire reporting online with the Communications Center, the yearly banquet and awards night, and development of the Emergency Management Director position. Chief Lane after that, Chief Lane was here for 4 years. He was our 2nd career chief, Lamb to Lane, and I don't know how that happened. So, was here for 4 years. Chief Lamb, and that should say Chief Lane, see there's a typo there, established our working SOGs, certification requirements, reviewed personnel positions with job evaluations, and worked toward a long-term master plan. And then we get into my realm. I was here, I grew up in this department. I was fortunate enough in 2002 to get hired as the chief. I was already at the rank of deputy by then, career firefighter, Brunswick Naval Air Station. Kind of set back a little bit, looked and said, I can work 24/24 at the base, that's 24 on, 24 off federal schedule. Or I can come here as chief, possibly, and have a lot more time at home and watch my kids grow up for about the same amount of money. So I was fortunate enough to be able to be hired October of 2002, and I worked digitally in a host of projects to include our apparatus refurbishment and replacement program. With the help of a truck committee of about a 12-person truck committee, we established when trucks needed to be fixed, how much we needed to put in the account, and that's what we're working with today as we're going. Completion of the fire report program with the dispatchers. Grant acquisitions in the excess of $350,000 through federal and emergency funds. Goal setting for the department and its members. We have promotional ceremonies. We have a color guard who's presented at the Red Sox, New Hampshire Motor Speedway, the Shriners Lobster Bowl, and we've done countless funerals throughout the state. People call up and actually have us take part in their funeral processions. And if you've ever been to a funeral that we've been at where we posted guards, it's pretty nice. Command and control at scenes, and not to say that, of course, my predecessors did not do that, but we can see, of course, as we grow older and newer technology, the fire service has changed immensely in the last 20 years, that command and control in scenes has changed a lot, and I was able to implement that, and we have a chain of command and everything else. We have accountability on scenes. We have officer collateral duties. I can't do this myself. I have 10 officers and I'll get into that all have collateral duties, whether that's SCBA programs, turnout gear, apparatus, repair, everything else. I can't do it myself. They're the ones that are making sure that that stuff's getting done. I facilitate it, but they're the ones that are on the floor making sure that stuff is getting done. And we have a junior program, trying to get the younger generation involved, get them to come through. You know, the fire service is a very good, if you get into the career side, it's a good job. I mean, typically you only work 1 or 2 days a week, 24-hour schedule. So I don't know how it happened, but my soon-to-be 18-year-old daughter tomorrow has also stepped up, and she's gone through the program, and she's gearing towards the fire side. So that's her goal, is to be a firefighter paramedic. So I'm not going to stop her. So we have replacement and upkeep of our programs. We have a turnout gear program where we replace like 6 or 7 sets every year. That's a rotating stock that we have to do with as many turnout sets that we have. Our SCBAs, those familiar, we just replaced our SCBAs last budget season, bringing them up to new technology. Like I said, the last 20 years in technology in the fire department's gone. It's just skyrocketed. There's a lot more technical stuff that we can work with and everything else. We update our SOGs, our guidelines as we work. Those are always being updated, and that's a working document. Our extrication equipment, our uniforms, fire prevention, we're in the schools every year. We're at LCS, and we also usually do one big fire day, whether it's at Aubuchon's or at the fire stations, that we do a full fire prevention type stuff. When we're at LCS, we're going through 700 kids in about 3 days doing fire prevention stuff. So there's a group of guys that are dedicated, and they do that. Updated radios, repeaters, and et cetera. And all the above work is done with the commitment of the dedicated members of the department. You know, I have to mention that all of this has been done with minimal impact to the budget also. Have to throw that in there as we go. So, at the department as it is today is myself. Each company has the same setup. It has a deputy chief, a captain, 3 lieutenants, and then the minions underneath them. I mean the firefighters underneath them that make sure that the work of ease and everything else. We do have a juvenile fire officer who does have specialty training in any juvenile fire setter type stuff. So that individual is a staff position. That's the white one just under me. That we do. If we have any juvenile fire stuff, he works very closely with the police detective to make sure that we're in line and we can do everything we can for anybody who's a juvenile fire center, because that turns into something very bad as they get older. So we average or respond to 250 to 300 calls per service per year. The budget impact of just under $50,000 over the last 11 years that I've been doing the budget. That's only an average of $4,000 a year, 1.8% increase to the budget per year. And that's not including the truck plan. So me as a taxpayer in this town also understand, the impact of that. We don't, we're not out there going after a bunch of stuff. We have plans established, and there's a reason for that. It's a minimal impact on taxes as far as we're concerned, and that's what we work towards. That's what we strive for. That's all Ricker Park. If you see that, the piece of steel that they're sitting, that the company is standing in front of right there, or behind right there, is from the World Trade Center. We were able to acquire a piece of that from the World Trade Center, and if you go to Ricker Park now, you can see that that's actually in a nice setup. We built a pad for it, has chains around it, and everything else, and we have a memorial to the worst day in our history, basically, for 343 New York firefighters and the civilians that went through there. So our future goals, of course, I'm going to plant the seed again, fire stations, stations, whatever we have to talk about and how we're going to get there. You got to understand that we have modern equipment and vintage stations. That shows when we bought the ladder truck. When we bought the Pierces, when you're in the falls, you'll see that the ladder actual bay is 3 feet shorter than the rest of the bays in the station. We did that. The fire department guys did that, did all the work on that, so that we could fit that truck in the station. When we go to buy engines now, we're going to either have to buy a custom so it fits in the station, or we're going to have to address that. So, and the location on Main Street in the Falls, not a great location. Everybody's been down there. We had a fire on Very, Very Main Street, and I didn't get to see how Main Street was on Very, Very Main Street that night because we were actually working a fire. But I could tell you that it was very congested around the firehouse because all of my guys probably came in and parked the way they usually do and ended up coming to the fire. So I'll apologize for that, but on the same token, we were doing what we're supposed to be doing. So we're going to progress into the EMS realm, starting the first responder program, and that was out of Stephen King Foundation grant. We actually got a grant for $8,000 for anybody in Lisbon to get something out of Stephen King. I think that's pretty good because he doesn't usually do that, and I don't even know if he did. The foundation gave it to us, but that bought our EMS equipment, and we're starting a first responder program. So it'll just be critical calls in the beginning, but may turn out to be a possible revenue source once we go upper license levels and everything else. I know our intern town manager is coming from an EMS-based fire service, so I might have some insight there to be able to help out. So, ongoing training, we have officer development, officer requirements now. They have to be Maine State Fire Officer qualified within 3 years of actually getting their position. So they have to keep their schooling up, as well as I do. I have to keep my schooling up. This room this weekend was packed with about 20 to 25 fire chiefs that we came, and we had a seminar and a class that the Maine Chiefs, Fire Chiefs gives. So we hosted that for the county. So life skills for members. When they come on in the fire department, we understand they're not paid very well. They have good equipment. They have, and the hours aren't very good because they're up at all times of the night, whenever, and weather-wise. We try to give life skills. When they come in, they're interviewed by a board. When they go for promotion, they're interviewed by a board, and it works that way all the way through their fire service career. So it's not uncommon. We give, they know when they come here, their baseline physicals are blood work and everything else. We give everything that protects that individual as well as the town is done in that physical, and it gives them, it starts their career off, hearing protection, everything else as we go through. So it gives them a skill that they're going to be able to learn from. Recruitment and retention, always having a problem with recruitment and retention. We've been, out of the 60 positions that we had, I was too short of 60 in 12 years, I think, once. We've never had a full vote here, and even now, we're way below that. So the village station typically is very low on manpower. They're usually, the falls, usually run somewhere around 40, 30 to that 40 range, and then down here we're usually around the 20 range. Very rare. If we hire 10, I end up losing 7 within a year. It's just not what they. Of course, we require firefighter 1. We give them all those trainings and everything else. So there's a big training burden in the beginning of it, at least, till we go on. So I don't know if that's hurting us or not, but it is. It's a national a nationwide epidemic as far as recruitment and retention. So trying to add members and keeping them, and by doing that, we have the banquet every year and everything else. That's just one of those cookies that we say, hey, thank you for being here and helping us out. So, in closing, the information presented to you tonight is merely the tip of the iceberg of what's happening in the department. Most of the information was based on the day-to-day non-emergent operations. Please keep in mind that the dedicated members of the department are out pumping wet basements, cutting people out of cars, extinguishing fires whenever the tone goes off, no matter what the time and weather. They are dedicated, professional, well-trained, and passionate about what they do. I, as chief of the department, am merely the figurehead. The members and the strength and the integrity. The members are the strength and integrity of the department. So, if you have no questions, thank you for support, and I'll see you 2 weeks from now when we do our facility tours of the stations. So, any questions?
Any questions from council?
I do have one. Chief, you had mentioned the idea of fire stations or fire station. Are you in the process of doing some sort of analysis, if it'd be beneficial to have one compared to two, or are we in that process at all?
I have some information that's been compiled so that when we do start to have those discussions, I'll have all that information so that we can weigh it all out and figure out what direction is the best one to go in. So,
Do you see that coming up, this year or in 5 years?
a new fire station.
Or the discussions to start?
The discussions, I'd like to start the discussions. What time are you getting done here? I'm ready. I mean, we're ready to start having those discussions. And the only reason I'm saying that is because for them to come to fruition is going to take some time, and for them to actually happen and understand. So there's pros and cons to both setups. We just need to kind of discuss what's going to work best for us, and open dialogue, I guess, is what and there's going to be many of them, because once you get my guys fired up in the direction, it depends on what direction they're going in. So, but motivated, that's what we are. So.
Anyone else?
So what you would like to see is just one station rather than having the two you got now?
I will wait to pass judgment on that until we can actually have those discussions. The ease of right now, I would say that the way we've operated for the last 170 years or so with the two stations works right now. It would be less of an impact. Not opposed to one centralized station, but it has to be a centralized station. You can build a new station in Lisbon Falls and close the doors at E.T. Smith, but from a political standpoint and a member standpoint, what are you doing? You're closing E.T. Smith and you're giving Lisbon Falls, and that's not, if that's the direction we need to go in, okay, and it can go the other direction. We have property in the village. We could build a central station down here and man it and be able to do and close the Lisbon Falls station. I think we have to look at, if we're going to talk about stations, we have to look at the number one priority in that, and that is, in my eyes, moving Lisbon Falls Fire Company off of Main Street. Because that station, where it's located, the ladder, exiting that onto Main Street, we're too close to the downtown area. We cause too much of a neighborhood dispute when we have calls down there with vehicle parking. It's just, to move them out of that area, I think, with the age of the station, is the priority. E.T. Smith Station is good and gets us by for a little while right now, but I think the priority, but it comes to operation.
Right.
Living near the fire station, I see, it's not just an annoyance for neighbors, it's definitely a hazard with, it makes it difficult to see when there are a lot of cars parked on the side of the street, and so it's definitely an issue that has to be addressed.
Our neighbors, and I have to say that in the Falls, have been, the Sausage Kitchen is right next to us, we've had our issues with, it's more so non-fire, non-emergent, we have to do our due diligence that he's running a business, and we have to make sure that we're not parking when there's non-fires. The neighbors bend over backwards when we have an emergency. They understand that. They're like, park in the driveway if you need to. So they're very good about that. But in that downtown area, it is a commerce area. We have to look and say, non-emergency wise, we can't just, you know, take over an area. That's not fair to those taxpayers who are trying to run a business here, so.
Well, thank you very much, Chief.
Thank you.
And we are looking forward to our tour.
Me too.
Next item is the Police Department presentation by Chief Brooks.
Thank you, Chief Brooks.
Okay. I'd just like to, before I start on PD, I'd like to go back to fire. I don't have the historical perspective on the PD one as the fire chief did back in the early 1900s, but I think it's important that, just to remind him too, that the actual first chief in our history, his name was Rorumbo, and probably before our time. And the second thing is on a little historical piece that I had the opportunity on 2 occasions, the councils, the selectmen at the time, asked me to be the acting fire chief back when the 2 first full-time fire chiefs moved on. And to put a PD guy into a fire environment is quite an experience. Probably more so for the PD guy than it is for all the firefighters. But again, being a longtime resident and knowing most all of them, we got through it really well. Our fire department is top notch. They're the best group of guys and girls wearing the uniform out there that we could ask for. They are. And Sean Gallipo, as the chief since '03, has done one hell of a job. I've watched him grow into that position, and we're very, very fortunate to have such a dedicated young man and fire department that we have. So your head's the same size, so I appreciate that. You're learning. But I mean that in all sincerity. Good group of people. Going back to my interim piece on the fire department, just a little story. Back when those Pierces were purchased, I was acting fire chief, and we had town meeting form of government then. And I had a real problem with green trucks and red trucks. And I told the fire guys, I said, if you keep it up, they're going to be white caps over blue bodies. And but then we all agreed when it came to town meeting and the fire trucks came up that whatever the ribbon color was of the night that the trucks were approved, that would be the color of the trucks. The night the trucks were approved, Twyla's ribbons were pink. Quickly thereafter, they appointed Sean Gallipo as chief, and he kept the lime green and red. Just a little bit of history in our town. Going to the police side of things here. Some of you have seen parts of this presentation when we did the council tour. There's been a couple of little revisions or updates, and we'll move on. We'll move on, Sean. Where's my...
Just hit the arrow.
Try the space bar.
Here we go. Mission of the Police Department in partnership with the community and respecting the rights and dignity of the persons we serve. The Lisbon Police Department has as its mission the goal of providing to the residents of and visitors to the town of Lisbon in an appropriate and organized manner professional law enforcement services using advanced police practices and resources. This mission was established many years ago when the department really started its community policing initiatives. Crimes against the people. These include assault, abuse, threatening, disorderly, domestics, harassment, sex offenses, unwanted persons, and etc. You can see where since 2007 we're still at an 80% increase in numbers on those type of complaints. Trends in burglary. Fortunately, this past year, our burglary numbers did finally go down. We had a couple of bad years when burglaries were plaguing us quite often. Our average over the 7-year period is 35 burglaries a year. Alarm response calls, again, the trend has come down somewhat on that. Medical calls, the comm center dispatches all calls for Lisbon emergency, including their contracted service to Bowdoin and mutual aid calls to all surrounding communities. I bring this up on medical calls because also good many of the medical calls that are dispatched in Lisbon, Lisbon police officers respond to them, and good many times they're the first ones on the scene. Again, it's because the ambulance service is either on another call or they're at the hospital. They're just not immediately available. But most generally, the ambulance, our Lisbon Emergency Service, does have on-call people in-house, and they do respond immediately. But there are times when they just don't get there as quickly as we can. And again, that brings me to the next slide here. Just 2 Saturdays ago, the Maine Association of Police gave the Life Saving Award. On Wednesday, September 25th, 2013, Lisbon Police Sergeant Scott Stewart and Officer Ryan McGee were dispatched to Spanish Creek Mobile Home Park for a report that somebody had fallen. When Sergeant Stewart arrived, he found an unconscious, unresponsive elderly male on the ground. He evaluated the man and determined he was not breathing and did not have a pulse. He immediately began CPR. Minutes later, Officer McGee arrived on scene and assisted with CPR. They continued, and eventually the subject regained pulse. He was eventually transported to the hospital where he recovered and is now home with his family. The officers were commended on their fine work and proudly presented by the Maine Association of Police a Life-Saving Award to Sergeant Scott Stewart and Officer Ryan McGee. Moving on with stats, you've got the sex crime calls are one's too many here, and we had 39 such calls last year. Motor vehicle accident calls, we responded to 249 motor vehicle accidents. Now the next slide, you'll see a different number, but again, these are the calls that actually come into the comm center when somebody says they've been involved in an accident. That could be anything from a true blue head-on to car sliding off the road and in the ditch and needs to be pulled out. So the next slide talks about what are actually reportable accidents. And reportable accidents are those that include either personal injury or $1,000 damage. And of the reportable accidents, 79 occurred on Route 196, 29 having injuries, 9 took place on 125, and 15 occurred on Route 9. And seeing on this slide, presentation had to be given to you last week. I know all of you already know the answer to this question, so we'll move on to the next piece, which is the answer to the question, which is Capitol Avenue 196 is our highest accident rate area. And that, saying that does not mean that the accidents actually occur in the intersection. It's within nodes. Nodes are on poles, so it could be within so many hundred feet on either side of that intersection. But the way the state diagrams accidents, that's the closest intersection to that particular area. Disorderly conduct, domestic calls. Again, the numbers went down slightly last year. That would be a nice trend if they would just go all the way down. Calls for service. This is the first, 2013 was the first year since '03, past 11 years, when the Lisbon calls for service were under 10,000. 2012, I'm sorry, calendar year 2012. No, I'm right, 2013. We started in 2013 by dispatching for Sabattis, Green, and Durham, and the total calls through the comm center were 14,599. The next slide shows that distribution of those calls. This projector has terrible color. It's it's much brighter on my screen, and it's much brighter using the other projectors that we've already done this on. But the red, the bigger red piece is the Sabatis piece of the pie. The blue, large blue piece is the Lisbon part of the pie, and then the small slivers there are Durham and Green. I suspect the green number, which is 306, I suspect that number next year may be more than Durham, because we didn't actually start Green until the 1st of March, I think, of this past year. This piece of it is on our ACO, Humane Law Enforcement calls for the towns that we serve. You can see again in the next slide, gives you a better visual of it. Lisbon by far has more calls for animal control issues. I went back to '05. The two colors are Sabatis and Lisbon. That's when Sabatis and Lisbon began working together with ACO, sharing the same ACO. And that's been our history through all the years. And now we also provide ACO service for Durham and Bowdoin. Staffing, this is, again, a stat I said last year that a lot of folks just have a hard time wanting to believe, I guess, in Lisbon, but we are, by census, the 25th largest community in the state of Maine. Your full-time police officer numbers have been dropping. We were 16, and then in '08 we went down to 15, and then in 10 we went down to 14, and 14 is our current number of full-time officers. In 2012, that ranked Lisbon 63rd in the state of Maine for police officer population ratio. As for the breakdown of staff, again, we have 14 full-time sworn officers. I have 5 part-time reserve officers who are scheduled for a total of 32 hours a week on the reserve schedule. That's not 5 times 32, that's 1 times 32, and they share the hours. We have 1 animal control person, 1 animal control officer. I have 1 full-time 32-hour-a-week administrative assistant. We have 2 part-time secretaries at 16 and 20 hours a week each. And we have 4 full-time dispatchers at 40 hours a week on their schedule. And we have 6 part-time dispatchers who share a 40-hour-a-week schedule. And that is the makeup of the 14 full-time officers. There's myself, a lieutenant, and 2 sergeants, 2 detectives, 2 school resource officers, and 6 patrol officers. That's the makeup of the department. Didn't change from last year, and that all that information's in the annual report, just like it has been. This is the going back to staffing. This is the percentage. Maine municipal police departments in 2012 were 1.88 per 1,000, which would put them at 16.9. You can't have a .92 body, so that's 17. If we went by the Maine municipal PD standard of 1.88, we'd have 17 full-time personnel. That's what those numbers mean there. It goes from statewide to New England to national. Current staffing of the full-time officers, again, there's 14 of us, and we have 2 SROs, and if you remember the SROs, we have an agreement with the school department, where the school department pays 75%. Our side pays 25% because they're in the school 75% of the year. We don't have them at our disposal on our patrol schedule. So I actually use, when you're computing man hours, you take them right out of the equation, that's 75% of a person. Then we have the comm center supervisor, who by budget is 50-50. That's also our IT person, and probably leans more towards IT and comm than PD. But today I can say it was PD because he was on our side of the wing taking care of a lot of issues for us. But anyway, when you roll those numbers together, you actually down to 12 full-time sworn that are actually dedicated full-time PD year-round. Again, the 25th largest cities, 63rd Maine. This is just some of the towns that have a higher ratio than Lisbon as far as police officers go. Community policing proactive initiatives. Our DARE program is in its 27th year. Again, a lot of history here. We had the first DARE program in Androscoggin County, and it remains a very strong program today. Both SROs are DARE instructors, and they teach programs both at the Lisbon Community School and at the middle school. And as you saw in Mr. Stevens' presentation last week, DARE and REC have teamed up for many, many years, providing programs for the kids. We sponsor and pay for, we meaning DARE, sponsors and pays for quite a bit of the programming for some of these kids on these trips, which we raise that money when we have that DARE football game every other year with former New England Patriots. We've been told that this coming year that Peyton Manning may be coming our way to play with us because he can beat us. Oh, okay. But anyway, Community Policing Advisory Group is also a group that's been active for 19 years. And again, the Lisbon Community Policing Group was the first community policing organization that was set up in Androscoggin County. And I believe to date is still probably the only one that has the makeup that it has. They were involved in the past with language development for the drug-free safety zones, noise ordinance, adult entertainment, canine waste, pawn shop ordinance. Past councils, when things would come up, would task the Community Policing Advisory Group to look into it and come up with some ordinance language, and they would present that back to council for review and later adoption. Our LEAD program remains quite strong. Again, this is the program that helps kids in our school system that are on the verge of entering the criminal justice system in a negative way or have already gotten involved in the criminal justice system. And we have a young person that was in our program and was on the verge of dropping out of Lisbon High School and got into trouble, actually went to court, was charged, went to court, and has since become part of this program. And that person was on the honor roll at Lisbon High School in the first quarter of this year. And this is a young kid that was on the verge of losing it. So we're pretty proud of that, and those are the kind of success stories we have with this program. Our Citizens Police Academy, we have had 5 of those in the past. We've had 70 people to date that have graduated from them. We have our community outreach program with our VIPS volunteers. This is the application for the Citizens Police Academy that's starting this month. We ask those who are interested to apply, and we'll see what we can do to get you in. We've not had anybody that's attended that how do I say this? Everyone who has attended this has been extremely impacted by it, with the knowledge and not realizing everything that the local police department does, the information that comes out of that. Continuing on, we have a Law Enforcement Explorer post. I saw those Boy Scouts come in here a little while ago. I'm hoping that in time we may get some explorers from that age group, but right now we currently have 8 active explorers in our Explorer post. Lisbon officers have been recognized by numerous organizations in the past: the American Heart Association, Maine Chiefs Police, Maine Association of Police, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, Maine Bureau of Highway Safety. Your officers are sworn Androscoggin and Sagadaw deputies. We have some that are also sworn special agents for MDEA, ICE, DEA, Central Maine Violent Crime Task Force, U.S. Marshal. Our canine is dual trained in patrol tactics and drugs. Again, is recognized as one of the better drug dogs in Maine. We will be retiring Dex this coming year. There'll be more on that as time moves on, but Dex is come of the age where it needs to be, will be retired and put out of service. And again, I'll have more news on that as the months progress, but it will be in 2014. And to end it, that's the photo of Officers McGee and Sergeant Stewart receiving their awards from the President of the Maine Association of Police. Questions?
Anyone?
Awesome.
So I noticed that in answer that you were able to answer Mrs. Fitzgerald's question along the way, which was how many people work in the police department. There are 14 police officers.
Oh, that was Mr. Fillmore's.
Oh, Mr. Fillmore, I'm sorry. Yep. It does say Mr. Fillmore here. 14 officers, 5 part-time who share 32 hours, an ACO, a full-time admin, 2 part-time secretaries, a full-time 4 full-time dispatchers, and 6 part-time dispatchers who total 40 hours. So you have a lot of bodies, but a lot of them share a full-time job, so.
Yeah, part-time do, yeah.
Right. Well, thank you very
Okay.
much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
Madam Chair, could I ask a question about item 8, which you already...
I was just going to point out that I noticed that we neglected to actually vote on those council orders on our agenda items. So before we move on to any new business, we'll go back to that. We need to vote on those 2 orders. So Twyla, if you could read the first one.
A motion for the 2014-2015 capital improvement budget.
So the motion that we are looking for is to approve the capital improvement budget. Do we have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
And do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion? I know we talked about it a little bit. I personally would like to see, having brought up the planning board points on road improvements and waterfront issues, I would like to see that, see those points added to the capital plan.
Want to amend it?
If we could. I don't know what section, is that what you're looking for, Dylan? I don't know which section it would go in offhand, but here we go. I mean, the road section would go in Public Works, I would imagine.
We have Jessica.
Jessica?
Hello. If I recall correctly from the planning board, the comment with the paving was to primarily look at possible alternative funding mechanisms
Yes.
for the paving versus actually changing what is in there or adding to what is in there. And at the time, my response to the planning board was that we are currently under an existing bond for the road improvements that we did a short number of years ago. And typically, how we've operated in the past has been to get through the bond in its entirety so that we're not bonding more roads before we're even done paying for the last roads that we've done. And so what it would allow us to do would be to, if we chose at the time that the bond was ending, to almost not impact the budget with an additional bond payment. It would just allow us to continue and go for a bond at that time and not have a fluctuation in the budget to add for additional funding. So what we try to do is budget for that work when the bond, in this case, when the road bond would be up, to continue for another road bond to address another set of roads that would need to be done at that time.
Okay, so I guess from my point of view, I just want to make sure that the capital plan reflects the comp plan, and that it doesn't fall by the wayside. So are you saying that by waiting for one bond to finish before we start another one to continue road improvements, are you saying that you expect that to happen before the next 2 years is up? Because that's what we were looking at in terms of the comp plan, is what I understood.
In the planning board's review, they review the capital program each year to determine where appropriate that the capital expenditures are consistent with the provisions of the comprehensive plan, and forward recommendations to the town. So I guess it's a matter of the verbiage, in my opinion, of where it's deemed appropriate. I am not sure at this point, as I am not a public works director or town engineer, to determine the feasibility of putting into plan or into place a plan to have riverfront access. And I'm not sure that that's an appropriate capital item at this point. You know what I mean? I think that's a greater discussion, and I don't know the intention of the charter in regards to ensuring that we hit every single aspect of the comp plan. I think it's deemed to determine that the capital programs, where appropriate, fall in line with the comprehensive plan, not that the comprehensive plan falls in line with the capital improvement. Does that make sense? It's to see that what we have in our capital plan follows the comprehensive plan, not that the comprehensive plan is outlined in our capital plan. Does that make sense?
If I might make a suggestion,
Yes.
Madam Chairman, I would suggest that we approve the capital improvement plan as it exists now, and what we would do is, in the future with our new manager, we should work on where we want to go. If we want to look at directing the manager to find out the cost of a park, or, choose the appropriate method for bonding or funding the roads, do it at that point, and
Yeah.
then work on it for next year, rather than try to do it now where the manager's situation is
Right.
really
And
in
I mean,
flux.
it's hard to build in riverfront when it was
That's not
turned
really a
down.
plan yet. Yeah.
You know what I mean? We're kind of limited in that capacity. We can't really put in the capital plan to proceed with riverfront property when it was turned down by the voters to pursue in any fashion from the town's perspective. So-
I thank you. I appreciate your input. Sure.
Before you go, when's that bond up, the current?
Yeah.
Bond? Ballpark?
I want to say 4 years.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I just, in response to what Jessica's saying, it was not the intention of the planning board to give the council specific direction on how to handle road paving, whether bonding or not. Nor was it the planning board's intention to give you specific direction on developing a water park or waterfront. However, it was the intention of the planning board to bring to your attention, as someone put it here, this is a dream list, that it can't be a consideration if it's not in the dream list.
Right.
I think my personal way to cover it best would perhaps just put the planning board's comments as an addendum to the accepted comprehensive plan and be done with it. Otherwise, by doing that, this input that you as a council require from the planning board will not be even thought of. So.
Okay, so thank you, Mr. Fellows. So what I'm hearing is in line with what you're suggesting, Mark, which is not an actual amendment, but a note to remind ourselves as we move forward and we're looking at this capital plan on a consistent basis, that we keep in mind the recommendations from the planning board, and I think that's a good idea.
And I think for next year, it would be a good idea for whoever's the manager to look into that and see, okay, what are some, ideas of what we need to do for funding for a park, whether it's, you know, even just analysis of where would be other locations if that one isn't going to work out, and get some budget numbers, because, you know, that's what most of this is budget numbers typically on, you know, what we're trying to hope to fund in the
Right.
future.
Right, good. Twilight, so the notes that we had from the January 21st minutes on the recommendations from the planning board, we could add those notes as notes to the capital plan, and I think that would resolve the questions I have. And I don't want to let it fall between the cracks, so I want to make sure that we stick with it.
So you're making a motion to approve the capital plan with the added note 1 and 2, as previously indicated by the planning board?
I would consider that motion.
I'll make that motion.
That's what your motion is.
A second?
I'll second it.
This doesn't need to be roll call, right? Okay.
Who seconded it? Right. So we really have two motions. No, this is the amendment, is to include the notes for the
Right.
questions 1 and 2.
Right, so first we'll vote on the amendment, and then we'll vote on the original motion. Okay. All those in favor of making the amendment to add the notes?
Order passed
Thank you.
7-0. And then the main motion as amended.
And then the main motion as amended, do we have that motion?
Yeah, we already have that on the
Okay,
floor, so we just
and it's
need-
already seconded?
Yep, all those in
All right,
favor?
all those in favor?
Order passed 7-0.
Thank you.
Revisit Order 2014-23, the energy saving performance contract.
Okay. This is, we're looking for a motion to accept the energy savings contract from Siemens. So do I hear that motion?
I'll make the motion to go forward with energy savings performance contract with Siemens Industry.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Before we go, do we have
sure.
do we have a final price on that in case, I know if we go forward with it, it funds itself, but if for some reason we discover there's not enough savings there, what is the amount that we'd be, you know, holding ourselves to pay?
Yes, we do have that.
Okay.
The dollar amount that we were given from Siemens is $35,000 to $40,000. If we were not to move forward with an agreement with them, then we would have to pay.
Okay.
It was also, I just wanted to amend that was also noted that we would be worked with on, should we
Correct.
choose not to go forward, that they would work
Right.
within our budget schedule to
Correct.
fit that in. I just wanted to amend that it wouldn't just
Thank you.
be unbudgeted funds that we would all of a sudden have to come up with.
Thank you. Okay. All those in favor?
Order passed 7-0.
Thank you. So I apologize for, I was so focused on the actual discussions, I guess. So the next item,
It's
please.
under new business.
New business is the opportunity for members of the audience to address non-agenda items, and there's a 3-minute time limit.
Good evening, Council. I hope I can provide a little bit of comfort to the discussion of the capital improvement plan, because the Trails Commission has been working, as we did on the Paper Mill Trail section, on a park plan that fits with the comprehensive plan's goal of having waterfront access. So we have identified a number of sites, one in the area behind the Big Dipper to be a small park area in recognition of some of our heroes in town. And we have some notable ones, so that will, I think, be a nice area for people to go and have a peaceful spot there. Another one, more of a picnic and family gathering area, possibly with some playground type facilities near the industrial park, that site that's been cleared there now, and another site that is a little further toward the area called the Koodle that is what we'd like to do there is during the winter it could be a skating area because it tends to be wet, and during the summer and the other seasons of the year, if you've ever been to the coastal Maine Botanical Gardens, they have a beautiful rock area with a pool that we'd like to have something modeled on that concept in that area. So I think that fits with what the comprehensive plan is calling for, to have that waterfront access in those areas. And additionally, I have talked with the owners of the Warumbo, the Miller property, and they donated all the waterfront area for both the new construction that's going on now and also the previous work on the Paper Mill Trail and those areas, and they're very interested in providing access even to get into the falls along the waterfront there. So that opportunity is still there. Even if we don't acquire the property, we can work with them on an easement to be able to use it. Another point, we've got some exciting things going on in terms of bike activities. There are 2 activities that are taking shape for Moxie Weekend for bike events, both with possibly a longer 50-mile type route and a shorter one. So we're being featured for that. And lastly, one comment on, we would like on the Trails Commission to have the Conservation Commission participate, and they need to be energized and activated. And the way that's going to happen is moving the Conservation Commission meetings to the town office. Where they meet now is not a practical setting. I attend the meetings when they are held, which is rarely, and it's cold, or once they get the wood stove cranking, it's incredibly hot, and it sucks all the oxygen out of the room, and everybody's falling asleep.
I've been there.
So it's really not suitable, and it's also, I think, not healthy. But we have very nice facilities here, and it would make a big difference in terms of getting people to participate.
Thank you for your input, Mr. Warren. Mr. Fillmore? And just a reminder, and I was sorry for the noise, and I'm not targeting you, I promise.
Understand. I got it.
Do you
I
have
got
the
it.
time limits?
I ain't even going to come close to that.
Okay.
Larry Fillmore from Lisbon. I'm looking for the possibility of getting an update on the negotiations between the town and DEP. See, that didn't take long.
Okay. Anybody else? Next item, Twyla?
Is council response?
I'll answer that question, Larry. I can't give you 100% of an answer, but I can give you at least what we know so far. I had the opportunity to attend the meeting with the DEP along with our attorney and Mr. Houston, who was our interim manager at the time. And we had some good discussion with the folks at the DEP, and the result has been that they have reduced our fines by several $1,000s. And I don't know the exact number, but we can get that for you. And that they seemed to me to be genuinely anxious and excited to be working with folks in Lisbon on finding a project that will fit their SEP guidelines for an environmental project. So we would still pay a large fine, but in paying that fine, we would pay it to the town of Lisbon, so to speak, in terms of environmentally improving something in our town. And there have been quite a few discussions about that. Mr. Warren offered us some good ideas, and the best part is that the DEP is, I was very encouraged by their, how positive they sounded in helping us to find a good resolution. So that's where we stand so far. Welcome.
Madam Chair, I got a question for Mr. Warren. Can I ask him?
Sure.
Mr. Warren, when you talked about the Trails Committee identifying some areas for the comp plan, is that a list that the Trails Committee has created and voted on, or is this just dialogue? How did you come up with those areas, I guess was my
It was
question.
at the last meeting, and I'd have to review the minutes to recall whether we took a vote. We're still in the public input phase of it. We haven't come up with a final document.
Okay.
So we really want people to help us flesh this out. So I don't think that we voted to finalize it.
Okay, that was my question. Thank you.
Thank you. And our next item, Twyla.
Is under appointments. Order 2014-24, the interim town manager.
Thank you. As everyone knows, at our last meeting, we, as council, had an executive session, and we discussed what we would be doing to move forward for an interim town manager while we do a search. In general, I think council agreed that it would be good to have someone who's not interested in being our permanent town manager. It felt like that was a good place to go because we can focus on a solid search. And Mr. Dale Olmsted has agreed to fulfill our needs for the time being, and we agreed to his terms, and I do have a contract with me for everyone to sign. So if there are any questions from council or anything, Mr. Olmsted, you spent the day beginning to get to know the folks in the town office and see how we work.
I did.
We really impressed you, I bet.
You actually did.
Oh, good.
You have good administrators. Today was orientation for me, just trying to figure out who everyone was and what they did and trying to remember names. I did have a couple of citizens drop in to say hello, and one counselor stopped in to say hello, and it was a good day.
Great.
So I'm looking forward to working with the council, the staff, and members of the public while I'm here for a few short months.
Good. We've agreed to have Mr. Olmsted help us out a few days a week. In looking at the strength of our administrators, our department heads, we thought it was a fair agreement. So, do I hear a motion to appoint?
I think the motion would be.
That was
is
me.
it for the motion to approve the contract?
To-
Because we did the appointment
We did the
already.
appointment last time, you're right, to approve the contract. And if we, and you received the copy I sent, okay. And this is for Mr. Olmsted's records. If we need to have the motion on the floor, and then we can discuss a little more, right?
You like?
Okay.
I'd make a motion to approve the current drafted language for a contract with Mr. Dale Olmsted in the town of Lisbon.
I'll second it.
Okay. So what I did was, Mr. Olmsted explained his terms to us. They seemed fair to us. And so I just made sure that our attorney put it into contract form for us. We can take a look at the language. If there's anything that needs changing, we can do that. But I think the gist of it, I think
this captures it.
yeah,
Just
we
quickly
tried to keep
review
it brief.
Good.
Simple and easy to understand.
You should know that this will be the first contract I've ever had.
Really?
Okay.
Yeah, I worked for 31 years in Freeport on a day-to-day basis. Never had a contract.
That's
Amazing, isn't it?
That's something to put back in my mind.
Impressive.
Yeah, it is.
All right. Does anybody have any questions? Do we need further discussion? Okay, great.
Give me a pen.
All right. All those in favor?
Order passed, 7-0.
Thank you very much. I think we're all looking forward to working with you, Mr. Olmsted.
And likewise.
Thank you. Why don't we swear him in?
Yes, you're welcome to.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Olmsted, would you raise your right hand?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution and you will obey the laws of the United States and the state of Maine, and that you will, in all respects, observe the provisions of the Charter and ordinances of the town of Lisbon, and will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of interim town manager for us? So help you God.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And sign there.
There you go.
And our next item.
Is council communications.
Okay. Anything from any counselors? No?
I do have one thing real quick. My iPad died, of course.
Here's another pen.
One thing I neglected to mention when we talked about the Siemens contract is, I know $35,000 to $40,000 seems like a lot of money if we were not to move forward with that contract, but I thought about it being a person on the interviewing committee is we would not be in the position we are to discuss this type of contract if Siemens wouldn't have been the ones to bring it forward to us and say, hey, this type of option is out there to help you improve your infrastructure and to help you guys move forward with saving money. So I do think that there is going to be, some sort of project out there. I do realize it's a lot of money, but I don't think we would be here today voting on it if there wasn't something there, because Siemens, I don't believe, would have led us in the wrong direction. There's one more thing, but see if I can get it on my phone.
Well, while you're looking for that, Dylan, I agree, because I think one of the driving reasons that we even initially considered a performance contract is because we know there's so much that needs doing, and we needed to find the best way to find those things, identify and find the best way to solve it, and to help save money for the town as a whole. So,
I seen their demonstration. They did one for the school department a while back. And I saw where there was a lot of savings and different things that they did, and it pretty much paid for itself.
Yep.
I'd be surprised what they're doing now if it doesn't.
yeah, and they do have a good reputation. So,
The other thing, I've got it, the Lisbon Snow Chiefs Snowmobile Club will be having their annual sleigh rides up at Bard's Field on Upper Main Street on Sunday, February 16th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. You're going to stop by. They have homemade donuts there. And then there's a capital improvement public information night scheduled for February 25th from 6 to 9 p.m. at the Lisbon High School to discuss a gym, a track, and a performance art center that the school department will be attempting or discussion of moving forward in some sort of direction for those projects. So that will be February 25th, 6 to 9 at the Lisbon High School.
you just reminded me, Dylan, don't we have the father-daughter dance coming
do.
up at the MTM Center?
We do.
I'm looking at the calendar right now so that we can help remind people when that is. Events, there we go. And I'm still trying to make my smartphone not be smarter than me. And I can't find it, but I know
I
it's
have
probably
it
the
right
Saturday, Saturday the 15th, is that it?
If my phone will go quicker than me. Oh, come on.
But I'm sure Positive Change Lisbon probably has it on their Facebook page, and
It's at the MTM Center.
yes, I just don't know which day it is, but I think it's the 15th.
That is a Saturday.
Right. I can't use my phone good enough yet. All right, but just a reminder, if you're interested, lots of dads and daughters have a lot of fun at that every year. It's always a big success, and whether there's a snowstorm or not. I think we'll move to the next item.
Next item is to adjourn. Oh, because there is no executive session.
There's no
That's right.
executive session for a change. All right. All right.
I'll make the motion.
Roger makes that motion.
Okay.
Who seconds it?
I'll second it.
Okay. All those in favor?
Order
Thank
passed.
you.
7-0.
Well, they changed their mind.
I thought you were going to second it.
Hey, Dylan, what'd you say that meeting is?
Turn the recorder off.
The high school.
At the high school.
Oh, it's high school.
No, Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays.
Not gonna?